All right, everybody, I'm back. About to go live on Podbean, talking to my buddy Josh Shoemaker about wrestling. You guys got the commercial before. All right, here we go. All right, guys, welcome to another afternoon edition of the MURF and EDUBBS Sports Show. This is a special edition of the sports show, though. We're not going to be talking about baseball. We're not going to be talking about football. We're not going to be talking about golf. We're going to be talking about a sport that I think that everybody has known somebody or has a passion for it or has done it. But the bad part about that sport specifically is it really doesn't get too much recognition past, I guess, the Olympics. College wrestling, high school wrestling is a high-level sport. These guys and these girls, guys and girls, and these guys are tremendous, tremendous athletes. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about. And I know we were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to get him on to discuss wrestling and maybe shed some light on some of the questions you guys may have out there. Or I just know that just looking from some of this information that he had sent me, it seems that a lot of people are into wrestling. And again, it's just a shame that, you really, once you get to that Olympic pedestal, you get that gold medal, and then, unfortunately, it's you become a coach or whatever. But we're going to ask Josh about this, and I know Josh has coached it and done it, and we're going to get Josh here on in a minute, and he seems to be calling in right now, so let's get Josh on. Hold on, Josh, you got to call in again, dude. I hit the wrong button. One more time. There you go. Invite. All right, so. Hey, Josh, you there?
Hello.
You there, Josh?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I was just talking to the people out there, giving them a preface to say that this is going to be an all wrestling show. So if you're coming on to talk about baseball or anything like that, But everybody's going to learn something here today. And I know, Josh, that you're very passionate about the sport of wrestling. And I wanted to get you on to shed some light on some of the ins and outs and what it takes to become a wrestler in college and high school as well.
Yeah, I actually grew up wrestling. Mm-hmm. But to me, it was a love-hate type of sport. And after high school, I stopped following it for a while. And then I started coaching again, which brought me right back into it and actually renewed the love of the sport for me.
Okay, well, it seems like to me, Josh, when I talk to people like you, and the love of the sport is literally what drives somebody to become the best at it, because they're very passionate about it. And I know a couple of kids, these kids in the neighborhood, some of these kids really didn't know, they weren't really too good at baseball, they weren't really too good at football or basketball. And they tried to wrestle. And you know what, though? They became wrestlers in high school, and they absolutely loved it. So obviously there's a passion for it, but you have to realize what it's all about first.
Well, definitely. To me, I played football, baseball. Wrestling was the hardest sport to do. You put your body through everything from really November until February, March of every year. And with wrestling, it's 7 days a week. You're not eating.
Yeah.
You're putting a major toll on your body with just every single day wrestling and practice. And I'm telling you, you love it, but when you're doing it, well, me personally, I hated it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Loved it when I was wrestling and the matches, but the practice, the cutting weight, the just nonstop. It was one of those things where I did it for so long. My senior year, I almost didn't wrestle because I was just burnt out, because it takes a toll. Because growing up, you don't just do it in the season. You have tournaments all year long that you go to, and they're fun because you're just like we did with travel baseball.
Right.
We hung out with our friends, and then we wrestled for 2 days in a gymnasium.
Now that's two things, 2 points that you just brought up there. 'Cause I can remember being young, and my cousin Sean, he wrestled. He wrestled for Farrell High School in Staten Island, and he wrestled for Manhattan College. Now I can remember being a kid, in my high school, and I can remember my cousin being over there for Christmas or whatever the holiday may be. I can remember my cousin at 16 years old, being like, I can't eat. I got to cut weight. I can only drink water. I got to lose 2 pounds. Now, for a sport like wrestling that has such a high level of energy, a high level, when you guys cut weight and does that make you guys feel weaker, or is it more like you're driven because you're driven mentally, where the physicality of it really is mental because you have to kind of, you haven't eaten in 2 days and all you've been doing is drinking water, but yet you still got to go out and kick this guy's ass. Is that kind of like a mental struggle to you, especially at a young age?
Yes, and unfortunately, I never did it correctly, and the majority of high school kids never did it correctly. And even when I was trying to teach my high school kids, when I was coaching them, how to properly cut weight, they didn't do it right. Like you just said, we pretty much went without eating. Like there were times where I would come home at night. My mom hated it because she would have a meal on the table every night, and I would have like a bite of one thing and then a glass of water,
right,
and then go to school and not eat. In my high school, sometimes, depending on how much I had to cut, we could get out of class and go down to the wrestling room and get on the bike and put on your sweats, which you're not allowed to do, sweatsuit.
Now, have you? Now, you know what?
Wait for the day.
Yeah, have you had that? Have you had that one? Would you wrestle with that one guy? There's always that one guy who's just the one that the phenomenal athlete, the guy that never had to cut weight, the guy that was always just kicking everybody's ass, the guy that was always just in tip-top shape, and you guys are all struggling. There's just that one guy that's just so easy for him. Like every time you see that's coaches. Those are the guys that are just gonna go so far. But is that like, would you have somebody like that in your high school days that it was just so easy, like the cutting weight part and just the wrestling part and the mental part, that it was just so easy for him?
To be honest with you, no. Rich, a lot of the guys I know that were state champs and that cut weight, and they had a hard time doing it, and it wasn't fun. The only person was my cousin, who was a heavyweight, and I would always get mad at him because I'd be sitting there cutting weight, and then he'd be sitting next to me on the bus eating a freaking sub.
That's gotta suck.
So, really, most of the people I know that were really good. Now, some of the lighter weights, like the 103 or back in the day it was 99-pounders, they were normally ninth graders who barely weighed 90 pounds. So were they cutting? No. But then you had some seniors, Bob Crawford, I think he wrestled 112. He was probably 6 foot tall.
Wow. Is that in high school or college at 112, Josh?
What was that?
Is that at 112? Is that wrestling in high school or is that wrestling in college at 112?
That's high school.
Okay.
College starts at 125.
Gotcha. Wow, even 125. That's small, huh? You would say he was 6 feet tall?
Yeah, Bob Crawford, he was a very tall kid. He was taller than me, and I was 5'9" in high school, so he was probably 5'11", yeah.
Now, do you think a guy like that? Let's use that guy as an example. He's tall and lanky, but he's still making weight. Does that give him an advantage in the type of sport that you guys do, as far as having like maybe his limbs are a little longer, or maybe he could wrap the legs up a little more, or when you're if you're taller build like that, does that make it does it give you a little bit of an advantage? Maybe you could reach around longer or further, or does that give you a little bit of an advantage? You think, or not?
Definitely for him, 100%. Because you got to figure with him being 5'11". At 112, most of the kids he was wrestling were probably in the 5'5", 5'6". So his reach was unbelievable. And then he did something that we call ride legs. So when you're in a top position, he would then throw his legs in between these guys' legs and just kick them straight out.
Wow.
And they're pretty much on their belly prone with their feet up in the air. And this guy would just do all the maneuvers from riding legs, halves, all the stuff.
Wow. That's and I looked your. That's why I asked you this morning what high school you went to. I googled you. You're a pretty good high school wrestler, Josh. You weren't too shabby. You're not really. You're not just talking. You're a pretty good wrestler. I googled you.
I was better than average.
Yeah, absolutely you are.
My junior year, I lost in the regionals, which up by us it's called districts, regionals, and states. Here it's sectionals. But I lost to a returning state champ from AA. I wrestled AAA by 1 point, and he was a 4-time state champ.
Wow.
So that got my name on the board for the next year, and I went into districts undefeated, and I wrestled one of my arch nemesis, Joey Gummo, and he beat me in districts, but then I rebounded and beat him in regional finals.
Okay.
And I went to states, lost my first match in my senior year. I lost my 2 matches at states my junior year. Lost the first match by 1 point. My head was just not in the right place. Went into the wrestlebacks, broke 3 of my fingers in that match, and ended up losing that. So I was 0-4 in my state tourney, and I was ranked 3rd in the state my senior year. So that was one of the reasons why I kind of lost touch with it, because I didn't live up to my potential, and I also felt like I let a lot of the Lock Haven people down, because Lock Haven is called Matttown, USA.
Wow.
It's wrestling. Wrestling in Lock Haven is like football in Texas.
Wow.
We had matches against our rival team, who now all the kids go to the same school, Central Mountain. But we had Lock Haven, then we had Baldigal Nittany, which was a AA team, and then Sugar Valley. When we would wrestle Baldigal Nittany, it was standing room only, and then they put people in the cafeteria where they would stream it live on TV.
Wow.
So the energy in those places were just unbelievable.
Wow.
But when you're ranked 3rd in the state, and then you go back to states and you freaking go 0-2 again, I just lost all love, any desire to do it. I didn't go to college to wrestle. My college, I went to Lock Haven. The coach got me in, tried to get me to, I just couldn't do it.
So in other words, so what you're saying, obviously, because I know you personally. Me and you are very good friends, and I know in your life you're very competitive, and you're very, you're very competitive in a good way. And like, maybe, do you feel like maybe back when you were in high school, when you were younger, and we all know that when we're younger, we're still trying to figure stuff out, we're trying to figure out what we want to do. Now, back when you think about that, do you think that maybe you should have pushed yourself a little bit harder, or do you think that, or maybe like, give some advice to other kids that might be going through this, like, that they think they got to this one point as a high school wrestler, and they just kind of like lose because they beat themselves up too much, that they, but they're good wrestlers, but they beat themselves up so much that they just kind of like happened to you. Like, do you think that was something like mental with you, Josh, because you are such a competitive person that you just reached, and like I said, looking at your record and looking at you as a wrestler, you were pretty good. So I guess in your mind, you want, obviously everybody wants to be the absolute best. But then, do you think that's when people come to a crossroad at as a sport like that and say, wow, there's so much competition out there, there's so much going on, I'm losing, I'm dropping weight, I'm gaining weight, my body is just, I hadn't eaten in days, and it's like, is this fucking worth it? You know what I mean? Like, that's, you know what I'm saying, Josh?
Yeah, but it was more, when I look back now, I can see that I didn't do everything I could have done to get on the podium at states.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I went to practice. Yeah, I ran afterwards. I cut weight. I did this. But I was in high school. I had a girlfriend. I did this. I did that. Some of these kids nowadays, Rich, they go to wrestling practice for their school, and then they leave that wrestling practice to go to their club wrestling practice to get with some of the best kids in their area to better themselves. Right. You know what I'm saying?
So there is.
I think it was more.
So there is a travel aspect to it, like baseball. So there is, like, once you're done with school, there is a club aspect where you can continue to wrestle.
Yeah, nowadays there's a lot of clubs, and unfortunately, a lot of it's kind of like travel baseball. You don't have to be the best; you just have to be able to pay.
Right.
But
that's unfortunate.
Some of the best, you know what I'm saying? Some of the best wrestlers, though, are going to some of the top clubs. They don't call them travel teams, but they're clubs, wrestling clubs.
Okay.
Because that's how they get better. Iron sharpens iron. So if you're in one of the top kids in your wrestling room and there's just another guy that's like your caliber, it's hard for you to get better because you two learn each other's moves and you don't really expand your knowledge. But when you go to a club and you have other kids there that are at your potential and even better, they have different moves. You learn their moves. You learn a lot of stuff. But in the wrestling room, like, I wrestle with the same 2-3 guys every practice.
Right. Now that's that's kind of, and like you said, that doesn't kind of brush up your skills. Like, you know these guys. You're with them every day during school. Like, that this guy is gonna, you know, if you get caught in one position, he's going to pull that move. But you're saying like when you go to these club teams as baseball, because that's what I can reflect on, because I know the baseball travel program is like, you know, when these kids come from different parts of the area, and now you're seeing different pitchers, now you're seeing different hitters. Like, same with the, you know, with the wrestlers, you're seeing different techniques, you're seeing, you know, seeing just different faces. You know what I mean? And that itself, you know, see somebody that you know, like I know this guy. Like I know this guy from the paper. This is Lockhaven. I know this. I'm just using your town as an example. Like I know this guy from the town over, and this guy's tough. You know, and you got to study his moves, and that's kind of like, it's like a chess match. I would think it's kind of like a mental chess match with a lot of physicality.
Yes. But when you come into wrestling, a lot of times, like, nowadays, you have a lot of video where you can watch what this kid does and his tendencies and stuff like that. But what I told my kids is, I said, don't watch too much of it, because if you change how you wrestle, he's going to win. He already has the heads up. He already has the advantage because you just changed your methodology just to combat his.
Right.
You can switch up a little bit, knowing that if he likes to do this one thing, don't tie up that way.
Right.
But don't change up the whole thing.
Right. Right. Exactly. So that, you know what, that one more question about like, you know, the high school aspect of it. Like why in your mind, like we're going to go through the college standings, you know, the NCAA standings in a couple minutes, and I'm looking at the different colleges. Like when you look throughout the country, what makes like specific towns? Like you said, your town, Lockhaven, that's like Matt Town. And like you go to Iowa, you go to Pennsylvania. There's just certain states where wrestling is just like inbred. Like why, and like why if you go to some place like maybe Florida where it might be there, but you know if you're going to Iowa, you know if you're going to Penn State, you know if you're going to Michigan, like that's a wrestling area, that's a wrestling school. Like what makes areas more prone to wrestling than other sports?
To be honest with you, I can't give that answer.
Okay.
I just know in my area, there was not a lot of stuff to do in the winter.
Right.
We didn't have hockey. We didn't have, you know, you played basketball or you wrestled.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure, you know,
And
go ahead.
in a lot of the places, like, well, I was a little taken aback when I started to coach up here, because like I said, in my area, you start wrestling at 5-6 years old in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
I started coaching up here, I think in 2009, and I was doing a middle school. Mm-hmm. I was thinking I was preparing them for high school when I actually had 95% of the kids on my team, 30 of them, never wrestled before in their life.
Wow.
So I went from thinking, all right, I'm going to teach them the next level, to I got to teach them the basics.
Now you as a coach, and me and you have coached for years together, and you know we you know you're a great coach. You know you're good with the kids. You're very, you know, I just observing you being a coach. You're a very good coach, and you're very good with young men. Now you as being a coach of wrestlers, I was like, does that kind of set you back one step, or is that kind of like, all right, wow, I got a new mind to mold?
What do you mean by take me back a step?
Like you said, like, you know, when you started coaching, like you said, yeah, like I mean, like when you started coaching, you thought you were going to go into a program where you thought like most of these kids at least have a little bit of knowledge of wrestling, but then you realize that 95% of them have never wrestled before in your life. Does that make you give you full of energy and like let's go with new talent, or is it like, all right, so I got to kind of like roll back a little bit and I got to teach these kids the basics from the absolute beginning?
No, I enjoyed that. That was a challenge for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I've never coached like elementary kids to where I'm just going to the basics. But it brought back the wrestling to me because I was able to not have to fix any bad habits that they had. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes It's easier to create something in a wrestler when they're already going like immaturity-wise and start off new and say, this is how it is, than someone who had bad habits when they were wrestling at 8-9 years old and are still doing it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I know I have a friend of mine. This is the amazing thing to me about wrestling is I have a friend of mine who is he's an iron worker. I won't mention his name, but he's an MMA guy. He's fights on a pretty high level. He's from Yorktown. He's got so many so many accolades, from I forgot what high school he went to, but I know he's the high school's filled with his accolades and stuff like that, and he's an MMA guy. And what he said to me, he said, when you're in the ring, fighting somebody, and if you look at their background, he says if their background has a high-level wrestling background, he's like, you really got to revamp the way you're going to fight this guy, because even on an MMA level, it's like you're going to come in, you're going to have brawlers, people are going to hit you, they're going to punch you. But he would tell me that once you get close with somebody, if you're a wrestler, it's over.
Yeah, and you just think about it in fights also.
Right.
How many times you've seen a fight stay on its feet? Not boxing, but like a street fight or a bar fight. A lot of times you end up rolling around because once you get, but they know they're not going to stand there. Most of them are going to go toe to toe. They want to tie up because, which a lot of the NFL linemen that wrestled, you have unbelievable balance as a wrestler. If you've done it for years, Rich, you can have my leg up in the air and I'm not nervous. I know how to manipulate my body in a way to get my balance to where you're holding my leg and I'm putting the weight on that. You know what I'm saying? Now I just kind of controlled you.
Yeah.
And with the MMA, that's a huge thing for the wrestlers now. Like you were saying on the introduction, that back in the day, you wrestled, you went to college, you tried out for the Olympic team. If you didn't make that, you coached. You really had no other avenue to go.
Right. Right. And, and obviously, I know it's kind of like, it's completely different. The guys, some of these guys, go on to become, WWE or whatever that, wrestling is. Like, obviously that's like a big, that's not a big, pomp and circumstance. But again, these guys could go on to that. And, and those guys are phenomenal athletes too. They, just because that's fake. And you really can't compare the two because a real wrestler and a fake wrestler, they're both. But some of these guys like Kurt Angle and even like the Iron Sheik, and like, numerous other guys, I'm sure you know better than me. These guys, like, the Iron Sheik was a top wrestler in Iraq. And Kurt Angle, top wrestler in the United States of America. Like, these two guys went on to have a lucrative career as wrestlers, but unfortunately, like you said, some of these guys, don't really have that outlet. You know what I'm saying? EDUBBS is going to call in a minute, Josh. He wants to ask you something.
All right.
You know what I'm saying, though, Josh?
No, they don't have that. What was that?
No, I said, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you feel about that?
No, you're 100% correct. Like Kurt Angle was an Olympic champion, phenomenal athlete, but he didn't have anywhere to go after that. So where's he going to get paid? In the WWE. He did quite well for himself there, but through all the years of wrestling in WWE, he's a hurting guy right now with injuries and everything. Broke his neck, so
yeah,
it's rough, but. It's rough, but nowadays there's a lot more going on with wrestlers and what they can do after college. They even have wrestling now where they get paid, where some of the top guys go and they wrestle each other off, like the can't think of it right now, the X, Final X, where they had kids out of college now going and wrestling each other in a dual meet, and the winner gets paid, the loser gets paid. Not what professional athletes get paid, but still, it's an avenue.
Good. Well, obviously you could raise a family, and like, you love the sport, you could raise a family, coaching and do it. I mean, listen, you're not going to be a multi-millionaire, like some of these big WWE guys, but like any profession, you could raise a family, have a humble life, and have kids, raise, you know what I mean? Like, now that's good that they have avenues for you guys that do want to continue to push the sport of wrestling, and then they can make a career out of it. You know what I'm saying? I think, Josh, I think EDUBBS wants to chime in. I think he's got a question for you. He's at work. EDUBBS, you there, buddy?
Yeah, what's up, guys? How you doing? You hear me?
Yes, what's going on, EDUBBS?
Hey, John, how you doing? I'm working in the parking lot, guys, so if I get your horns honking at me, just like a little stroll, but very entertaining, Josh. I really appreciate you talking about wrestling. I just had a question for you, and I remember in high school the kids would spit in the cup because they had to lose a couple of ounces, and to get to that weight. I just had a question, though. If you're skipping meals academically, I mean, when I was in high school, I needed 5 meals a day just to keep the energy, the brain moving. I mean, how was it starving yourself, basically, do academics, homework, tests, and everything like that?
It was rough. It was rough, and that's why they've now put in a lot of rules on weight cutting and how much you can cut, how much you can certify at. Back in the day, we would walk into our trainer's room with the coach standing there, and the trainer would use his caliper, which was his pointer finger and thumb, and pinch you and look at the coach, and the coach goes 135, 135.
Wow.
So there was no like real minimum weight you could go at. But nowadays you have to go in front of doctors. You have to do a piss test where they check your hydration, and if you're not hydrated enough, you can't get certified. If you're overhydrated, you can't get certified. So that cuts back on the kids that were cutting weight without drinking, and then just guzzling water right before the test. So now they're overhydrated, so it doesn't look good on that end either.
Well,
So
it goes for all sports nowadays, Josh. I mean, we're a little more advanced than we were back then. I mean, back then, guys would eat for days to make the weight. I said to a guy, "Want some pizza?" "No, I can't eat till Friday after the match." It's like, oh my goodness, So it's crazy.
But that's the point that's the point we were making, E. How important it is to these guys. You know what I mean? Nobody really that's why the importance, I think, of this interview with Josh is to get the word out there and realize how hard these guys are working. Like, you seen the guy, you want a slice of pizza, and you're like, I got to eat 5 meals a day. But it's really important for that dude to cut that weight, and so he could go in there and kick that guy's ass and have that pride. Listen, you know what? Wrestling to me is a sport. It's like unlike any other. It's unlike like baseball, unlike stuff like that. That's boxing you could equate it to, MMA, anything that you go in there as a lone guy and you're going to wrestle another human being. There's nobody else involved. There's nobody you could pass the ball to. There's nobody you could shoot the puck to. There's nobody you could do that. There's you and that other guy. There's nothing more natural than that, like a boxer or a wrestler, and there's nothing more natural. And then, like, you watch these MMA guys and these guys, and they see how they get hurt, and somebody watching from the outside says, "Oh my God, I feel so bad for these guys." You know what I mean? They're getting their asses kicked. One guy got knocked out, but every person that steps into those rings or whatever they call it, they know that something can happen to them. And it's their job to make sure that they come out on top and they win that match. There's something really, really energetic about that to me. Like, that's just you and that other guy.
Yeah. Another question, Josh. You were wrestling in Pennsylvania. Did you do any wrestling in New Jersey? I grew up in Middlesex County, New Jersey, and they had some great wrestling programs, and they have a girls' wrestling program now, as a matter of fact. But just wondering if you ever got down to Middlesex, because the program down there was pretty good as well.
Yeah, we traveled Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland for tournaments. They had a thing called AAUs back then, which is kind of like the New York and the Empire Games, and it was for wrestling, and it was all different age groups. And if you won in your region, then you went to the districts, and you went to a region, which would be New Jersey, and then the states for AAUs would be like down in Maryland or in Pennsylvania. But it was, I think, New York, New Jersey, like the states I just said, Ohio and all them. And that's when you would have kids that weren't real good at the districts, but then the top 4 go to regionals. So that's the top 4 in that district. And then your regional top 3 go to states. That's when you have pretty much the best kids in your area, and those states are now wrestling each other in the state championships down there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One more thing, Josh. The scoring system for wrestling, I mean, I'm naive. I must admit, big sports fan, never really cared for wrestling. Went to a couple of matches in high school, but, just for social reasons, hang around some like that. But how's the scoring? Like, toward tournaments, what am I looking for? Football, for touchdowns, field goals, but what about wrestling? What am I looking for in terms of scoring?
Well, I'll go with Scholastic, because that's pretty much what you went to, the matches. There's freestyle and Greco-Roman, that's what they do for Olympics. But for Scholastic, the 2 guys start off in the neutral position, and you want to take the guy down. So you want to get in control of him and be on top. That would be 2 points. Now, if that guy reverses you and gets on top, now he gets 2 points. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say in a little bit, there's a guy from Lock Haven in the 50s and 60s called Mike Johnson, who 4-time state champ. And in his senior year, no one scored an offensive point on him. Wow. So meaning he took the guy down. The only points that people scored was when he would let them up, which is called an escape, and they get 1 point. So he would take them down, let them up, they'd get a point. He would take them back down. Now he's up 4-1. So this guy was phenomenal. It was unbelievable what he did. But the points, and then when you're on top, if you put the guy into what's called near fall, which their shoulders are at a certain angle to the mat, you get back points. So if they count out to 2, you get 1 back point. You know what I'm saying? Then they count out to 5. I think now they changed it in college to 4 back points. So if you can hold a guy on his back without both shoulders being pinned, you can get up to 4 points. And then if you bring them back over and do a different move, put them back over, they start counting again to get the back points. There is no 1 back point. There's 2 back points and 3 back points.
Okay. Is there maybe like some like, you know, is there a bunch of judges, Josh, or is it just like one guy judging the fight, judging the match? Sorry.
There's 1 referee.
Okay.
There's 1 referee. In some of the state tournaments, you'll have 2. Like with the big tournaments, you'll have a guy on the mat, and then you'll have another ref kind of behind him looking to see if anything's going on. But the main ref is the one that has the ability to call or not. He can go ask the other ref what he thinks, but he's still the main guy who gives the points and all that. But if there's a question or anything, he can go to the other ref and kind of get the info from him.
All right, so kind of like, you know, he could get a little information, but at the end of the day, it's his words, you know, it's his words law. You really can't argue with the referee.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned that you never argue with a referee. You never tell them. You ask them questions. If you ask, could that have been 2? Instead of going, that's 2, that's 2. They kind of get on your side a little bit. I was more of the finagler where I wasn't a yeller at the ref because it's a hard job. You know how it is, Rich and Eric. Referees, umpires, they get nothing but complaints. And it's a hard thing. It's a split second. It's here. It's that. Is that control? Is this? There's a lot of judgment calls to where people are going to yell. But you know what? It's his job, and he's doing the best he can.
Right.
So
yeah,
if I'm the one asking questions and being nice, the next time he's like, oh, you know what? Maybe that is 2. Yep, that's 2.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
All right. Yeah, it's, you know, so it's kind of, it's kind of like the umpire. It's kind of like, you know, don't scream at the umpire. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously that makes sense. You got anything else? You got to get back to work. What's going on with you, bud?
I'm good, Murph. I'm just going to listen.
Okay.
My walk and eat some lunch. So, Josh, thank you so much. Learning a lot.
Oh, no worries. Enjoy your walk, and I'll be back on with you the next time you guys go live.
All right. All right, E. We'll talk to you a little bit later.
Take care, Rich. Take care, Josh. Yep.
Hey, you too.
Hey,
getting back to the,
wait, hold on one second, Josh. Hold on, Josh. It sounds like this might be one of your friends here. Somebody just, I don't recognize the name. Somebody just call in?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Who's this?
This is one of the rival schools of Josh's in high school. A couple things that maybe Josh can speak on. You touched on some of it, but I think he could expand on this a little bit.
By the way, this is my buddy Seth.
Seth? Seth?
Yeah.
All right, Seth. How you doing, Seth? I'm Murph. I'm Rich. Me and Josh have been friends for a really long time. It's really good to have you on the show, brother.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm excited that you provided a platform for somebody knowledgeable like Josh, who's been passionate about coaching in his life on the topic of wrestling. You know, us guys from Pennsylvania do whatever we can to try to grow the sport, and we appreciate you giving a platform to have discussions on the sport that we love so much.
Of course. I'm going to try and get this out as many people as I can. So, you know, because I don't know much about it, but you guys are going to set some light on it for me. Seth, you know, you guys could bounce back and forth and talk. Go ahead. The platform's your guys for a couple minutes. What do you guys got to say to each other? You going to talk junk to each other? What are you going to do? Have some fun with each other.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Josh, you guys haven't talked about that's interesting is, you know, he was a rival high school. I was the high school that he discussed where the gym was packed. They would have a closed circuit TV for the overflow of fans. It got pretty chippy, to say the least. And then as life progresses, one of the cool things about wrestling, and I don't know so much about other sports, but it sort of develops this concept that we call the fraternity of men, where, you know, if you went through that grind and you come across each other, because there's something weird, wrestlers can usually always tell if another guy was a wrestler. And it's kind of weird, the camaraderie that it builds. Like, for example, I went to a big tournament here in Pennsylvania, last week, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I went with one of Josh's teammates and then another guy from another neighboring rival high school, and we all three sat together, and those two guys that were sitting together with me had wrestled each other 7 times.
Wow.
And the last 3 matches came down to overtime between the two of them. And despite us all three being from different high schools, all big rivals, we sat there and enjoyed the wrestling together as friends. So Josh can probably speak a little bit on how cool of an element that is to the sport.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't even think of that aspect of it, but Seth, you're right. Growing up, the rivalry, it's not like we hated each other. We disliked each other because of wrestling, but not as people. But after you get done with it, like I said earlier, you realize you have a respect for that person who put their body through it and who did it for that many years, that it does become a friendship. And like I said, I began to love the sport more after I quit doing it. And going to the States with my dad, that's a special thing I do now with Tuffy Council and a bunch of those people. Because I don't live there anymore, but we've never gone to do anything with wrestling. But with you, George, and Bill going to watch, there were 3 top wrestling high schools and the rivalries we had. But for you 3 to go up there and sit and talk and probably laugh, it's something that you don't get, I don't think, in other sports. It's just there's that bond that you have with another wrestler that you can just sit there and talk and watch.
Now, Seth, are you still involved in wrestling? And you live in Pennsylvania? Am I correct in saying that?
So I do live in Pennsylvania. I still live sort of near Josh and I's hometown. Mm-hmm. And I'm still involved as a volunteer coach where I help with our elementary program, our junior high program, and our high school program.
Now, being where you're from, like, are you seeing these kids that are developing more, or are you seeing that kids maybe like younger kids now need a little more work? Because we all think, listen, we all talk, we're all adults, and we observe some of these kids, like like I said, some of these kids are kind of like, the pussification of society, as I like to call it sometimes. I like to think that, as Josh as well, we know each other a long time. I think our kids grew up with a little bit of like, there's no second place trophy here. You know what I mean? There's no, like, this is how it is. You know what I mean? So are you finding with the younger kids, it's harder to get them that toughness, or do you think that it's instilled because they want to do it?
That's kind of one of the things I was going to bring up that Josh can expand on. You had asked earlier about you look at some of these hotbeds of wrestling and how do those cultures get developed. And so I'll start by saying I help at a charter school that's sort of a newer program. It was basically designed because when they consolidated the 3 schools that he talked about earlier, our community is where I live now is sort of separated from those other 2 communities. Okay. And so they started their own charter school. Now, the culture of wrestling at the charter school, we just started the elementary program maybe 3 years ago and the junior high program at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we never really had like a feeder program into the high school level. So as a team, we maybe struggle a little bit. We continue to improve since we do have the elementary feeding the junior high and now the junior high. But, it's tough because you go right over the mountain, and Central Mountain High School is a powerhouse in the state right now. They're down at the Powerade tournament, wow, which is a top tournament in the country. And so part of my struggle in coaching is they don't have the culture here that Josh and I had growing up and that Central Mountain has. Gotcha. So it's a little harder to get people to buy into year-round wrestling, club wrestling, freestyle wrestling. And so Josh can talk on this a little more. He was saying about his hometown, and I guess I can almost call it sort of my hometown because my father graduated from the same high school that Josh graduated from. And, you talk about that culture and what you had in that area, and I think areas that are as good as that area is, on my high school team, my father was an All-American, national NCAA All-American, multiple-time state champ. My teammate's dad was an NAIA national champ. I think a couple times state champ. Our principal was a multiple-time state champ, college wrestler for Penn State. So it was almost like in areas like that, you were just kind of expected to do it if you were a boy and born.
Okay. So it's kind of like, it's kind of inbred in you. You know, like you go to Texas, you play football. You know, it's just kind of inbred in it. It's like a lot of these dads that are sending these kids to this elementary program that you're speaking of are probably dads that are like, oh my God, finally I could get my kid into wrestling. Finally, there's a program where they can teach them the proper ways to wrestle. I mean, and then that's good because, you know, you get word of mouth. If you get guys that are really into it, then you get word of mouth. And listen, who knows, Seth, the elementary program in your area might grow just from word of mouth.
Well, and Josh can speak on this about his high school in particular. Lock Haven High School, his high school, just had dominated him. I mean, they didn't have as many state champs as Clearfield, but I mean, there were heydays where, you know, that team was producing 3-4 state champs back in the 50s and 60s. And I mean, and his coach was a college, like, you know, for example, his coach was a great college wrestler. My coach was a great college wrestler, and now when you look at our local Central Mountain coaching staff, you got 2 All-Americans, NCAA Division I All-Americans coaching, and then his old coach who was, probably one place away from an All-American. I think in total they have 5 or 6 college wrestlers on their high school coaching staff, 2 All-Americans.
And that right there in itself is just, you know, that these kids are definitely going to learn how to wrestle. But I have a little question for the both of you guys too. Like you keep talking, you know, guys going to college. Like, is there a lot of money out there for kids if they're top wrestlers in their high schools? Is there a lot of money out there to go to these big schools like Penn State and Iowa and places like that?
Go ahead, Josh.
Josh?
It is not like football and that. They have a limited amount of scholarships they can give out. And Seth, you know more about this with the college and that. It's you're nowadays with the NIL, some of these wrestlers are now getting paid outside of it. But when I coach, I told my kids, because all the kids, D1, all the wrestlers think they want to go D1. I said, if you get a D3 scholarship, or they can't do D3 scholarships, but they can give an academic scholarship to a wrestler,
right.
I said, take it. I said, don't think that you need to go D1 just because that's the top. I said, you're getting an education for free. Do that.
Well, before I hop off, and this is in line with what I wanted Josh to expand on, we talked about the culture. You brought up dads a little bit. It's really interesting in the sport of wrestling that, there's probably not too many other sports where the term burnout is used. And so what you see in some of these areas is, you got these, I hate to say it, but you got these wrestling dads who a lot of them didn't compete at wrestling, and they realized how tough those wrestlers were when they were in high school, or they did compete and had very little success. And these are the guys that you're seeing yelling and screaming at kids at 5, 6 years old at wrestling tournaments. And, what we see a lot of in areas like ours, and I would use this comparison. My high school was ranked number 1 in the state and nationally ranked in the USA Today. We sent one kid off of that team. I mean, I guess I sort of left a Division I program almost before starting, but kind of started. I don't know, complicated situation.
Right.
But other than that, we sent one kid out of that program that competed at the Division I level. Wow. And then you look at Josh's program. Josh, did you guys have any D1 guys?
Yeah, we had Ranella.
Well, we in those 4 years that we were in high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
In my year, 9th, because we had Pete Ranella went. He went to. Did he go to Lehigh? Yeah. Where did he go? Lehigh.
He went to Bloom.
Bloom. We also had Steve Krause. He went to Clarion.
All-American to Clarion.
Okay.
Yeah, who is now, like what you were just saying, the kid that went D1 for you is now the head coach, and Steve is an assistant coach.
Right. But then the interesting thing is you look at Bald Eagle area, and, there was a picture of Bill with 4 guys from that high school team, all national qualifiers at D1.
Wow.
So which is kind of
It shocked me,
interesting.
Seth. When I saw that picture, it shocked me. I was like, wow, I did not know that.
So I think that's the thing that, Josh and I probably try to coach on is, there was so much emphasis when we were kids to grind, win, that maybe it turned the sport a little sour.
Okay.
And then you look at other programs that have had huge successes in developing for the next level. And I think that's the direction wrestling is going for most guys who grew up in that era, is to change the culture to it being such a grind at a young, teach a love of the sport. So you do it through college. And the other thing that, before I hop off that Josh can kind of talk about in that line is the advent of women in wrestling and the impact that it'll have on growing the sport. I have 6 girls on the elementary team right now. It's unbelievable how fast they learn at that age. And what's going to be cool to see is as women's wrestling grows, I really think, and Biff, the guy he was discussing as the All-American head coach, Biff kind of made the comment about, think about when these girls are parents, how much that's going to impact the sport, because they're going to want their kids to wrestle. And now you're going to have super knowledgeable mothers coaching and in the stands.
Yes.
But I don't want to hijack the show. I wanted to touch on a few things that Josh can expand on. And again, thanks for having Josh on and giving us a platform to talk about the sport we love.
Hey, Seth, it was great. Listen, it was great talking to you. I'm a guy, like I said, I'm trying to get this podcast off the ground, and I am interested in a lot of stuff that, if I don't know about it, I want to know about it. I'm a very inquisitive guy, and I just really appreciate it. I know Josh always speaks very, very highly of the people that he grew up with back in Pennsylvania, and you guys are a very close-knit group up there. And Seth, I really appreciate it, brother, and hopefully maybe we'll talk to you soon on the MURF and EDUBBS show. Maybe you call in. I don't know if you like other sports, but you're a good guest. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Seth.
Hey, Seth.
Josh.
Have a happy New Year, bud. And,
Happy New Year.
I'm going to come up for some of that Wagyu beef that you have.
I'll share it with you.
All right, bud.
All right, brother. Happy New Year.
Bye.
There you go, Josh. That guy shed a lot of good light on the sport of wrestling. He's a good buddy of yours?
Yeah. Yeah. I've known him. He's wrestled as long as I have.
Okay.
And another one that could have wrestled in college, but burnout, I would have to say, is what it is. And like he said, it's a rough sport to do for 13 years.
Right.
And they're kind of changing it now, and the mindset, like Eric said about cutting weight. I remember this one match. I was a junior. I was supposed to wrestle 135.
Okay.
The day before the match, I was 6 pounds over 135, which is nothing to lose in one wrestling practice. But our 130-pounder got injured. So the coach pulled me aside and said, can you get that down to 130? I said, Coach, I'm 6 over right now. He goes, just try and see what you do. And that was a time where I was running during class and all that.
Oh, my God.
Rich, I got to the match. We were wrestling State College, which is Penn State, but it's their high school.
Uh-huh.
I wrestled a JV kid and barely won because I had no energy.
Wow.
None whatsoever. Because you don't eat all day, and then, of course, I don't eat the right stuff after I weigh in. You just eat garbage real quick.
Right.
No energy. They're kind of, a lot of kids are shying away from a lot of weight cut and trying to get to the weight where they're the strongest.
Okay. I would have to assume, I mean, it's different way of looking at it, but I'd have to assume that that'll take away from like maybe the energy loss during a match. Like, if they're wrestling at their absolute weight, hey, like I said, but at least they have more energy because they're able to eat not what they want, but they're able to diet correctly, and they're able to, to be able to maintain like a little bit more energy than someone who's really cutting weight.
Yes, but the other side of that is some of the kids, like I went in my senior year wrestling, I weighed 155, about 160. I wrestled 135.
Mm.
So you got to think that if a kid is wrestling 135 against me, and he was only 140 at the beginning of the year, that's about 20 pounds of strength,
right,
compared to what you see where I'm going with this?
Oh, of course, yeah,
I
absolutely.
160, so I was a normal 160, 155 weight. To cut the 20 pounds down, and that kid only cut 5. Now he's 140. I have 15 pounds more strength, you would say. Wow. Just like look at MMA. Some of those guys that cut down can't make the weight. They get mad to one. I forget who it was. MMA. he cut down to 155, and then they weigh in the day before, a couple days before.
Right.
He actually weighed 190 pounds.
Wow. Wow. It's, yeah, and listen, I'd have to assume, like you're just saying, that you're making a good point about it, is like, obviously weight is very important when it comes to like having, having leverage and stuff like that to somebody that's on the other side of the ball, per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that he kind of spoke about, and you asked earlier, and I said it's kind of hard when you say like the programs that are good all the time, it's generational. Like the head coach's son at Lockheed, at Central Mountain, is now wrestling. You know what I'm saying? So the people that don't move out of the area that wrestled, most likely their sons wrestle, because it's just, like you said, it's what you do. If you're a farmer, when your kid gets up, he goes out to the farm and starts farming.
Yeah, man. So let's, all right, look, we talked a little bit about the high school, and then how about, now you said you didn't wrestle in high school, in college, or you did wrestle in college?
I did not.
Okay, but you coached.
When I was in college, I helped coach the junior high team, and then when I moved up here to Fishkill, I coached the Ketchum middle school, and then I think 3 or 4 years for the high school.
All right. Now let's talk about that comparatively for a second. Like, again, I'm going to laud you again as a coach, because I've coached with you for many years, and I'm just going to, you're a very good coach. Now, when you make that transition from being obviously the student to the teacher, now, is that an easy transition to make, like in the beginning, or is it something that, when you start coaching, is like, it's something like you look out there and you're like, you want to be out there on the mat? Or is it kind of like an easy transition where it's like, all right, I beat the shit out of my body for so many years, I got a lot of knowledge, and now it's time for me to pass on my knowledge to these young bucks?
For me, it was easy, because once I started to coach, I got to love the sport again, and seeing those kids, even if they won one match, seeing them win that one match was better than any match I won. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But some of the best wrestlers make the worst coaches.
Yes. That's the point I was making.
Because you're good
Go ahead.
doesn't mean you can coach it.
Right. Like you said, like you were saying it for anything. Like, even if you look in the major leagues, or you look in the NFL, a lot of these like high level coaches, either they never played the sport, or they were kind of like a player on the team. Well, you know what I mean? Like, that just leads me to believe that the superstars are there to do their job, but the guys that aren't the actual superstars are actually kicking back and learning and watching and learning the game and paying attention, and not being on that pedestal where you're supposed to hit 5 home runs, and not being on that pedestal where he's about to score touchdowns and win matches. You can actually sit back and be like, learn, and then possibly pass all your knowledge on. So I think that's my opinion of why I think that, like, if you're a good player but you weren't a superstar, I think those guys make the transition better as coaches than somebody that's been looked at in a spotlight his whole life as being, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. You really don't have time to kick back and say, well, I'm the best, I really don't got to learn, I'm just got to do what I do.
Right. And sometimes when you're not the best and you start coaching, you know how to teach those ones that aren't the best. Because then again, Cale Sanderson, the head coach for Penn State, he was undefeated in college, 4-time national champ, never lost.
I was going to bring him up to you, dude. He's amazing.
And now he's a phenomenal coach, but he brought in other people with him. But I think what makes him such a great coach is he pushes the kids. But if you ever watch, like, I don't know, because I'm not in that wrestling room, I don't know how it is, but every time a Penn State kid comes off the mat, one of the things they say is making it fun.
Really? And that's pretty that's because I'm looking at the top 25 here, and you pretty much, you got Penn State and Iowa have been swapping spots for many years, and you got a couple of other teams. But you say Penn State this year got 13 first place votes. Obviously, there's 14 people who vote, but obviously they are the top program in the country at this point.
Yeah, but there's two different things. There's the dual meet champs, like the top dual meets, which Penn State a lot of times, and a lot of the teams, like, we're Big Ten champs. That doesn't matter to them. They want to be the national champ, which means when you get to the national championship, you get points for every wrestler that wins, places, so on. Penn State could take second in the Big Ten, dual meet wise, but their goal for the entire year is to become national champs as a team.
Right. Now, is this with this, is this kind of similar to like what they do in like the other sports? Like they have this top 25 here. Now, this is the NCAA top 25 that I pulled from the internet this morning. Now, do they have something similar to maybe like what the basketball does, or they have like a team of a round of 25 teams, and whoever like the best college in the country is comes out on top, or like you said, do they kind of like the Nationals are that? That's what the Nationals are.
That's what the Nationals are. You have your conference championships, like the Big Tens. It's
right.
not a dual meet. You go out and you wrestle
right.
individual.
Seems like the Big Ten has a lot of teams in the top 25.
Oh, yeah, they're phenomenal. And then you get to the Nationals. But they just had I think I sent you and EDUBBS was the down in New Orleans, a dual meet tournament where it was actually not individual, but you went out and you wrestled other teams, and then the winner would wrestle the winning team, and you just kind of did it that. That's pretty much like the only team dual meet tournament type of thing.
Gotcha. It's like, so then it's kind of like, you win that tournament, and the reason why Penn State's ranked number one is because they normally come out on top of these big tournaments, them in Iowa. Is that the reason why they're the power, the power teams?
Yeah, well, Ohio State's been right up there recently with their teams.
And number 7.
There's a lot of teams. It used to be back in the day, Iowa, Iowa State, Penn State. Now you have Michigan has a decent team.
Yeah.
Ohio State has a decent team. You got teams that are coming in that are tough because they're pulling kids now. Wrestling's becoming a bigger sport everywhere.
Like because looking at the top 25 here, Josh. Now I'm looking at the Penn State's and Iowa, but like you just said, you got Virginia Tech, Missouri, Cornell. Number 25 is Cal Poly. Rutgers is number 18. You know what I mean? It's like, so like you said, it's not just like the Penn State. I mean, Iowa's got Iowa State. And they got 3 schools from Iowa there, but still, just because those are the schools that are powerhouses, other schools are obviously catching on, and like they're becoming just as powerful as the Penn States and the Iowas in the world.
Right. Well, the one big difference between when it comes down to the national championship is the caliber of wrestlers, because you can have weights. There's 10 weights, so you could have 5 strong kids, but if the other 4 or other 5 don't wrestle as good, you can lose a dual meet. But when it comes to the nationals, those 5 kids, if they're all in the finals, your team's going to be in the top 5.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's the difference between the dual meet and the tournaments.
Right. I'm telling you, it's definitely just because of this conversation that I'm having, I might start paying a little more attention to wrestling, because like I said to you before, it's nothing like eyeing your guy up one-on-one, and just saying, I'm going to kick your ass, you know what I mean? It's very interesting to me, that kind of dynamic. But you know what, Josh, you mentioned before, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I know you wanted to go into a couple of like the NFL players and a couple of guys that are playing professional sports on a high level today, that if you look back, that they wrestled as well.
Right. Well, one right now that I can think of, because I'm a Steeler, is Carlton Hasselrig. I don't know if you know who he is.
I do.
He was a lineman for the Steelers.
I do.
He is the only 6-time national champ, and he will forever be the only 6-time national champ for college.
Wow.
He actually started off at my college, Lock Haven, to play football, but he got injured. Then he went back out to Pittsburgh Johnstown, which is, I believe, a D2 school.
Okay.
And back in the 80s, D2 schools would have their national championship, and if you won D2 and D3, you got a bid into the Division I national championships. After Carlton Hasselrig won his sophomore, junior, and senior year, so he won it as a D2, and then that same year went to D1, won it at D1. So he won 2 national championships 3 years in a row. Wow. They changed the rule that they can no longer get a bid into the national. So he'll be forever the only 6-time collegiate national champion.
That's pretty. That's an awesome stat. Damn. Like, I'm looking at some of these guys here. Like, you're looking at some of like your best. You're looking at Hall of Fame linemen. You got Jonathan Ogden. You got all these big time offensive linemen. Chuck Noll. Your coach. You're from back in the day. Like looking at a lot of these professional football players. Like these are really high level. Ray Lewis. And they all wrestled.
Yeah, and you said it earlier. Wrestling brings out a very competitive person. because, like you said, it's you against someone else. You have the dual meet score then, so if you win, you get 3 points. If you major them, you get 4. If you tech them, you get 5. If you pin them, you get 6 points. Mm-hmm. But it's just you going out there against another guy. And if you don't have a competitive nature in you, you're not going to be successful in wrestling. And I think that's what helps people become the better NFL players, because it's just there's a mindset as a wrestler that you don't get as another sport.
Right, and you know what? And you bring up a good point about that. Is like with the football players. It's like, you know, when you're wrestling and you look in that person's eyes, like you could tell if that person's scared, or you could tell if that person isn't prepared, or you could tell if that person isn't ready to go at that second. And I think when you become a football player with that mentality, is like you could have that look and that stare, and you know if the quarterback is scared, you're gonna murder him. Or if you know if the guy on the other side is like, I got you. You see, and it's because you're so up close and personal with these guys that it becomes an emotional thing and like a mental thing, like it's a mental battle. And it's like, I'm looking at you, you are not ready for this, motherfucker. That's kind of like what I see.
And the other thing is, even during the match, you can break a person. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things where you can see, like, you're going against a kid and he has the thought that he could win, and all of a sudden you do certain things and you can just see you broke him, and now you know you got this match.
Yeah. That's that's a really, really big part of sports in general. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. You have to have that competitive edge, and you have to have that look in your eyes, like, you know, no, you're not overtaking me. It doesn't matter what sport it is. It could be cricket, it could be any sport. You have to have that mentality where you are not taking this spot from me. I don't care if it's a team sport or if it's a one-on-one sport. You know, it's sports, you know, at a young age, you know, what college and high school we're talking about now, it definitely prepares, you know, young people to be like young women and young men, you know, to definitely prepares them for life. Because listen, we know as well as everybody, the numbers just say it. You know, it's like not everybody is going to become a professional in their sport. And like the numbers in baseball, they just go from like 1 million to like, you know, like whatever, like 100. The numbers decrease significantly. But I do feel that a lot of those people that played sports, you know, at a competitive level, or were coached, or I had to deal with a team. I think sports, especially for men, because, you know, I have 2 boys, you know, you have 2 boys. It's like, you know, especially, you know, for boys and men, it's like, I think that definitely prepares them to go out in the world and have some part of compatibility where they can go into a room and have a job, or they can have a conversation, or they could take somebody saying their boss yelling at them and not curl up into a ball.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's the wrestling, like Seth said, wrestlers can, when you go somewhere, you can cut not just by the cauliflower ear, but you can kind of tell who's another wrestler.
Right.
It's a weird thing, but I think it's there's a thin line between cocky and confident. Mm. Oh, yeah. And a lot of wrestlers have a huge, they're extremely confident in themselves. Mm-hmm. And you'll see it. And when they do stuff, they do it 110%. If they're wrestling, they do it. If they're partying, they do it. If they're goofing around, you know what I'm saying? You can tell the guys. But what it did for me was, I don't think I can do everything, but there's nothing I won't try. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. It gives you that drive to at least try.
Right.
And it's funny, like you say that. It's like, you know, you're looking at all these wrestlers, like, you know, you sent me that, you texted us that information last night that people have done it. You know, listen, there's been, like, you know, professional, you know, athletes, business guys, but nothing is longer than the list of military that wrestled. The list that you sent me about military, and I even looked up more, it's just the list is endless of military guys who say that because they wrestled, it gave them an edge on their opponent, or whatever it may be. These guys all, you know, they're all in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, whatever it may be. And these guys all wrestled and say that, listen, like, you know, we learned how to become disciplined because of that. You know, the list is so long, Josh.
Yeah, and I think I spoke to you about it the one time we spoke on the podcast with EDUBBS. But do yourself a favor, look up Steve Tobos. His nickname's Turbo. He was a Navy SEAL.
Okay.
On SEAL Team 8.
Okay.
He was in Afghanistan to rescue someone. Chopper went down. He got shot in the leg, and it spiraled down and went out his ankle from the knee down. he proceeded, I don't even know how many hours, to sit there and still fight the enemy coming at him.
Wow.
And he would not take any morphine or anything because he did not want his mind to be affected. He eventually got rescued. They amputated his leg from the knee down. He worked his ass off to get back into the SEALs, became an instructor. You got to look it up.
Of course.
Tobos.
Yeah, Steve
I'll
Tobos.
send you a link.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phenomenal story.
Okay.
Phenomenal story. And that's a kid that I think he was 6 years ahead of me. So I wrestled in kindergarten. He was a sixth grader in what's called Mattown, which was our little wrestling club.
Right.
But it's just that, and I really do believe that he survived, and the mentality was through his years of wrestling. None of that, but his SEAL training.
Well.
himself through it is 100%. I think wrestling has a big impact on it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, what do we got? We covered the high school, we covered you, we got one of your buddies on here, we got the college aspect of it. And listen, another thing, guys, like, if you're a kid out there too, and like, again, like I said to you earlier, it's like, if you're a kid out there and you're listening, or you listen to the show and you're like, I really don't know what I want to do. If you guys get yourself involved in wrestling, man, like I said, I can know 3 kids that, Josh, you know them as well. I won't mention their names, but 3 kids, little timid kids from the Fishkill area. And all of a sudden I seen their dads recently, maybe like a year or 2 ago. And it's like, yeah, my son started wrestling. He's a brand new kid. So if you guys are up in the air about, something, that, your baseball teams, your football teams, but if you guys out there looking for something new, something to really, really put yourself on a good path of like discipline and being able to learn, being how to learn a skill, because wrestling literally it's a skill. It's a skill, and you have to be a very skilled professional to do it. And if you're not, you're going to get one up on you. So if any kids out there want to do something, want to try something new, wrestling obviously is a fantastic sport, right, Josh?
Love it, and I would push anyone into doing it.
Absolutely.
Female, male, I don't care what you are. Try it.
Absolutely.
Try it. It's not for everyone, and you'll find out if it's for you or not. And if it's not, who knows? Don't do it. But it might be something that changes your life.
Awesome.
I have to say real quick, I remember my coaches had a major impact. Like he was talking about Coach Buckwalter. Tough guy, rough guy, but he got the mentality of the wrestling in me. And then it was my elementary coach, Mike Gray. He was a college kid, coaching elementary.
Yeah.
And one of my proudest moments is when I was one of the last tournaments I coached for the high school, him and his wife came up to watch me coach. And that was
wow, just
something that it was like touched me very deeply.
Yes.
And you know what I'm saying? And I still call him coach, even though I'm 46.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You know what's funny too? It's like you say something funny. It's like I still see Hunter Ferris and Caden Ferris. Caden Ferris to this day still calls me nothing but Coach Rich, and so does Hunter. They both call me Coach Rich. Well, it's funny. It's awesome, dude. I love it.
Shannon hates it sometimes when we go out because I'll see a mom or dad, hey coach, or a wrestler, hey coach. It's and I take that with pride. I'm like, no, you can call me Josh now. No, coach.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's just not as important as dad, but it's still something that I love.
You know what that means, Josh? You know what that means to me? In all honesty, is like you could look at yourself, and that's when you could look at yourself from a perspective like, I made an impact on that kid's life. Whether it be little, big, I definitely made an impact on that kid.
And every time I started a season, we'd have our parents' meeting. And I would start off by saying, look, I'm not here to make your son, because I didn't have any girls, your son a great wrestler. I said, I'm here to make him a better man than he was before he started. And if he becomes a great wrestler during that, well then, kudos. But if he comes out a better man, I'm more important. I'm more proud of that than I am if he had a winning season.
And any dad that hears you say that to them, is like, let's coach, take my kid and you do what you want with him, because like, when you hear that from a coach and that coach is really involved, because you know as well as I do, like, just watching coaches through the years, like there's coaches that think they're just a body. There's coaches that are out to say, all right, you go here, you go there, you go here. But knowing the game is not, I wouldn't say secondary. It's no, you have to know the specifics of what you're coaching. It's obviously a big part of it, but I think you have to be like a molder of minds as well. You have to be, somebody that's gonna encourage the kids. You're gonna have to, you're gonna have to give them words of encouragement. You're gonna have to tell them they could do things. So and again, having a coach at a young age and making an impact on these kids, it feels so good. And like that's what you do. Like they have their dads at home. You know what it's even better for too, Josh, is what you think about it. It's like there's a lot of kids out there, that really the dads, for lack of a better term, the dads don't talk to them. The dads don't throw a ball with them. The dads don't, and when that kid comes to you or me and the dad sees us taking such a conscious effort in developing and teaching him and not saying just go out there and win, saying, listen, I see you got a little bit of an issue with your swing here, or I see maybe you could have scooped his leg a little differently. That dad or me also, now I'm a dad observing my sons being coached. Like, that coach to me sticks out more than the guy that's yelling and screaming, calling everybody a piece of shit because they didn't do their job correctly. That coach that's off to the side, that grabs the kid after he got yelled at for fucking up, and that guy that grabs him and says, listen, dude, it's like, he's the head coach, I understand, but maybe if you did this a little differently, or maybe if you did that a little differently. And those are the guys that these kids are going to remember.
Yep, because and like Seth was saying, a lot of the problems we had around the area is you had tough coaches, but you had coaches that cared.
Right.
But then you had the dad that would pull the kid aside and just berate him. And that's the kids that got burnt out. That's the kids who had potential but didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like I saw it all the time, and it killed me.
Yeah.
And it's like Seth said, a lot of them weren't wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
They were just pushing their kids to become the best. And I would always talk to the kids afterwards, win or lose. They had to win and lose with respect. I would never yell right afterwards. Sit down. First thing I would do is tell them what they did right, and then I would go over what we need to work on the next week of practice.
As long as you gave us as coaches, as long as you went out there, like you said, nobody's going to be the best. But as you went out there and gave it your all, and you left everything out there and you lost, how could you come into your coach with your head down and look at him, and any coach would look at that kid and say, put your head up, kid. So I just watched you compete at such a high level at a one-on-one wrestling match. So you lost. But you know what I saw? I saw you incorporate everything I've taught you. I've seen mentally, I've looked in your eyes, and everything I taught you, you progressed, and you're becoming a better athlete because of it. And those are the coaches that made so much impact on people's lives, man. And I know that's how we coach, Josh. It's like, we were very hard on our own kids. To a point where, Josh, I don't know if you remember, Josh, if the four of us had to sit down and have a conversation about, all right, guys, listen, I can't talk to Aiden, you can't talk to Maddie, you can't talk to Cole, and you can't talk to Hunter. We all got to talk to our own kids.
Yep.
Yeah, but again, I think the way we coach and the way I think our kids, our boys are developing into tremendous young men as well, and that just, that's being a father, and I only surround myself in this community. Like, I didn't grow up here, I'm up here 17 years, and through the 17 years, I surround myself with people, and the people I talk to on a daily basis have the same mindset as me. It's like, you know what? Number one priority, you, me, and a lot of our friends out there, is we're fathers, and we are going to raise our children to be the best they can be. And as long as you give us 100%, there's no way we could slight you for that. As long as you give us 100%, as a father, we're so proud of you. No matter what, you come in last place, first place. Look, you're not going to get a trophy for last place, but if I looked out there, you came in last place, and those 9 other people were that much better, and you competed, how can I, say, come here, give me a hug. We're going to get better.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, Josh. Is there, like I said, I think we covered a bunch of stuff. Is there anything that you'd like to leave today and let people know? I think we covered a lot. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you want to get out there?
No. I pretty much, all the notes I had down, we pretty much went over.
Right.
And it's like Eric said, if you don't know it and you watch it, it's confusing. It's not a sport where, like football, you go, oh, that's a touchdown. Oh, that's this. It's 6 minutes of just two people pushing themselves as hard as they can. And if you can get out to watch a match, go. I might even take it. And if anything comes up around here, I'll grab you and Abe and we'll go.
100%. I'd love to.
For me, it's exciting to sit and watch.
Josh, I'd love to. Again, I love new stuff. Like I would absolutely let me know, and Jack even too. Jack would want to come too because Jack was thinking about it. That Jack's got too many sports on his plate right now. So he was thinking about wrestling last year, but he's got too many sports on his plate. But yeah, absolutely. Let me know, dude. I'll definitely. Me and the boys will definitely come. Would love to come. This has been fantastic, dude. And I know you want to get out here and get the word out about wrestling, and I really appreciate some of your time.
I appreciate you having me on to talk about it. Like you said, I think you're number one sports baseball, and you're passionate about that. This is my sport, like your baseball. This is something I love. It's now finally getting on TV. It's not as good as other sports, but like we got to watch it sometimes on this app. Website flow, which bogs down, it freezes and stuff like that. But finally, ESPN's getting it on there more than just a national championship. But you'll probably be watching March Madness. But tune into ESPN2 and watch the March Madness.
March Madness, like
national championship, same time as the collegiate basketball tournament. So
that's awesome, dude. I'll definitely check that out. All right, brother.
All right, Jed, again, I appreciate it. It was nice talking to you. We're going to have to get together to get a drink or two.
Yeah, 100%.
Eventually.
Yes.
After the holidays.
Yes.
Settle down.
Yes.
Have yourself a very happy new year, a safe one.
Yep.
And tell your family I said hello.
All right, you too, Josh. All right, brother. Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, talk to you later, Rich.
See you later. All right, guys. So that was my buddy Josh, and I hope he explained the sport of wrestling to you guys a little bit further. Maybe some of you guys didn't really know much about it. I don't know if you guys wrestled in the past, or I'm going to be putting this out as a podcast. So you want to shed some light on a sport that I don't think too many people know much about. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. I mean, if you guys out there have a sport that you want to press that people don't know too much about, if you want to come on and talk about something, I'm open for any topic sports related. I'm open for any topic in general, anything. I'll talk about anything. So the bottom line is, like, anybody out there has a sport that they want to promote. I've come up with questions. I could ask you guys, how you got into it and whatnot. But other than that, it was really fun talking to Josh today. And I'm going to put this out as a podcast. Anybody wants to listen. So I'm going to say a little commercial, and I'm going to cut this out and put it on YouTube. Please listen to MURF Solo on the MURF and EDUBBS show, Talking Wrestling with my boy Josh. He puts a lot of insight into it. Anybody that knows anything about wrestling, come check us out. We're on Podbean. We're on Spotify. We're on Podchaser, Amazon, Google, Apple, wherever you guys get your podcast, man. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in today, and we'll see you this week. Me and EDUBBS are in the middle of getting episode 26 together, so that'll probably be by the end of the week. And who knows, I may pop on again tomorrow with something special for you guys. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. Appreciate everybody watching and chiming in, and I will see you guys later.